Good day, everyone. We are the Group C, and today we will be discussing about the principle of morals and legislation by Jeremy Bentham. The principle of utility, as famously articulated by philosopher Jeremy Bentham, is a foundational concept in the field of ethics and moral philosophy. It asserts that the moral worth of an action is determined by its ability to maximize pleasure and minimize pain for the greatest number of people affected by that action. The principle of utility, grounded in the nature of pain and pleasure, offers a rational and systematic framework for assessing the morality of human actions. It emphasizes the importance of maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain as ethical imperatives, guiding individuals and societies toward decisions and policies that lead to the greatest overall well being. Pain and pleasure, as the ultimate arbiters of right and wrong, remind us of the fundamental human drive to seek happiness and alleviate suffering, and they challenge us to act in ways that promote the greatest good for all. The principles of utility, as outlined by Jeremy Bentham, provide a comprehensive framework for evaluating the morality of actions and policies. By considering the interest of the community as the aggregate of individual interests and understanding individual interests as the promotion of pleasure and the reduction of pain, utilitarianism offers a rational and systematic approach to ethical decision making that aims to enhance the overall happiness and well being of society. The principles of conformity to utility and government measures alignment with utility are central to utilitarian ethics. They guide both individual decision making and government policy formulation by emphasizing the importance of maximizing overall happiness and minimizing suffering within the framework of ethical and moral considerations. Utilitarianism offers a systematic approach to evaluating actions and policies in pursuit of the greater well being of society. Actions conformable to utility can be described as ought to be done or right. Actions non-conformable can be described as ought not to be done or wrong. Even though the principle of utility forms the foundation of utilitarian ethics, it is not immune to challenges. Various reasons prompt intelligent individuals to question or challenge this principle. First is some argue that utilitarianism oversimplifies complex ethical dilemmas by reducing moral decisions to a calculation of pleasure and pain. Critics contend that certain situations require more nuanced considerations. Second, challenges arise when utilitarianism appears to justify actions that violate individual rights or principles of justice. Critics argue that it may lead to the oppression of minority groups for the sake of maximizing overall happiness. Third, measuring pleasure and pain can be highly subjective and challenging. Critics assert that the utilitarian approach lacks precision and can be difficult to apply consistently. In some cases, utilitarian conclusion may conflict with common moral intuitions. This misalignment can lead individuals to question the validity of the principle. And lastly, ethical decision making is inherently complex, and critics argue that reducing it to a simple calculus of pleasure and pain may not adequately address the intricacies of human morality. Individuals challenging utility should consider factors when evaluating their objections, including examining alternative principles and their basis, assessing practical implications in real world situations, and weighing the inconsistencies and problems that may arise with an alternative principle against those of utilitarianism. Critics should evaluate alternative principles for ethical coherence and consistency, recognizing the complexity of moral dilemmas. Considering the potential consequences of abandoning utility, individuals should reflect on whether alternative principles can improve overall well-being and social harmony. Additionally, it's crucial to assess how these alternatives would apply in real-world situations and their capacity to address the diverse range of moral dilemmas faced by individuals and societies.
You might be wondering, what's the correlation of pleasure and pain to legislation? Actually, pleasure and avoidance of pain are the legislators' goal. So, Bentham's seek to understand the value or the force of pleasure and pain. So Bentham's way of measuring pain and pleasure is referred by him as the hedonistic calculus. When you say hedonistic, it is engaging in the pursuit of pleasure and avoiding pain. Hedonistic calculus attempts to measure several factors of various outcomes to determine the overall utility of an action. So to a person, it depends uh, would it if it is greater or less pleasure and pain to these factors. So the first thing is intensity. Intensity, Bingham suggests that one way to measure happiness and pain is by their intensity, which refers to how strong or weak the pleasure or suffering is. It can be seen as the degree of pleasure or pain experienced. For example, a moment of intense joy would contribute more to one's overall happiness than a moment of mild contentment. So, it's a matter of kung ano yung like ano yung kung saan ka mas happy or is it too painful. That one outweighs if you're too happy, so it will outweighs the uh, pain, something like that. So next is duration, which pertains to how long the pleasure or suffering lasts. Longer lasting pleasure or pain should be given more weight in the measurement. For instance, a day of happiness would be considered more valuable than a fleeting moment of a joy. So it's a matter of time. So doon tayo dapat sa pang matagalang saya at iwasan ang pang matagalang sakit. Kidding around, next is certainty or uncertainty. And uncertainty refers to the likelihood that a pleasure or pain will occur. More certain pleasure or pain are deemed more valuable in the calculus. When assessing the value of an action, we should take into account the probability of its consequences. An action that is likely to produce happiness is more morally valuable than with uncertain outcomes. So it would be morally good according to this measurement if certain action is likely na ang mangyayari ay maganda ang resulta kaysa masamang resulta, di ba? So we have to avoid that one. So next is propensity or proximity. It's the nearness or remoteness of pleasure or pain considers how soon this nearness or remoteness of pleasure and or pain consider how soon these experiences will occur as a result of an action. So pleasures and pain in the near future should be given greater weight than those in distant future. So it is about kung ano yung immediate. This reflects the idea that immediate consequences are generally more relevant in the moral decision making. So kung ano yung malapit nang mangyari and we think that this immediate event will likely na magiging maganda yung resulta, then we should stick to that one. It simply says that we should prioritize kung ano ang malapit nang mangyari. And this helps in deciding if ang pleasure will outweigh the pain or this will decide if a certain thing is morally good if we're able to avoid pain.
Now, there are three additional factors. First is fecundity, or the likelihood of similar sensations like pleasure by pleasure or pain by pain, while purity, on the other hand, is the chance of not being followed by sensations of the opposite kind. For example, pleasure by pain or pain by pleasure. This apply to the act or event's tendency, not the pleasure or pain itself. For the last one is the extent. This is the number of persons to whom it extends or who are affected by it. For example, in war, large number of individuals and communities are affected by its pain, suffering, and consequences, weighing more heavily on the scale of pain than pleasure. And then you may ask how to estimate an act's general tendency. Well, considering the seven factors aforementioned, you can evaluate the pleasure and pain for those directly affected. Sum up the values of pleasure and pains, and then if the balance favors pleasure, it's good for that person. Otherwise, it's bad. Repeat for all individuals concerned for the community's overall tendency. For the practical application, always remember that it's not always necessary to follow all the guides mentioned above, but it can guide moral judgments and legislation. The closer the process aligns with these steps, the more accurate it becomes. Applicable to all forms and names of pleasure and pain. For example, profit, convenience, happiness, evil, suffering, and consequences. In summary, Bentham's principle of morals and legislation promotes utilitarianism, evaluating actions based on maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. It considers factors like intensity, duration, certainty, and societal impact. This framework guides ethical analysis by aiming to maximize overall happiness. In conclusion, Bentham asserts that his theory isn't new or baseless. It aligns with human behavior when individuals understand their own self interest. His chapter outlines a systematic way to evaluate morality. Thus, understanding how people perceive pleasure and pain is crucial. We are the Group 3, and that is all. Thank you.